Alright, this is part 1 of the lesson. Hello. So I did talk for about 45 minutes before I started recording this, so let's just go over everything once again. No, I'm kidding. So, yeah, okay, so enum's over. We're done enums. We know everything there is to know about enums. So I made this enum class here, message type. So now we can include a header to our message describing what type of message we are sending. So when we're spawning a player, here they are, we're additionally gonna broadcast a message to everyone saying hello. We're spawning a player right now. So let's do that. So let's make a net message. Fucking English. So first of all, we're gonna write. We're gonna write the header. Sneeze. Hold on. Buddy, come on. Why are you teasing me? Okay, whatever. So we're gonna write net message player spawn. We could be we could be thorough here and write the type like this, just to make sure that we're actually writing the correct type into the message. But I'm actually gonna do that, yeah. No, wait, not net message. Message type. Sorry. There we go. Thank you. There we go. And I am gonna do that actually, because as we'll see soon, that will become super important. So we're gonna write that we want to spawn a player. So that's the type of message that we are sending. Then we're gonna send which index we're spawning. Okay? Because this is important, because the user won't know this. Just from the player spawn, imp won't know, okay, but which player are we spawning? And it's gonna be important because later, whenever the players do something, we're gonna refer to their ID to say, okay, which player is doing something, which player is shooting a bullet or something. It becomes very important. We can't just say a player. We can't send pointers over. Can anyone explain to me what happens, or why doesn't it work? It's kind of a leading question. Why can't we send pointers over here? Why can't I do like message writes players event user ID? Yes, exactly. Exactly. We're sending over a pointer that's relative to our program. Alright? In our program memory, we have this array of players, and our pointing is pointing to that array. But of course, the application receiving the message is going to have a completely different memory layout. It's going to look completely different, or probably look different. The player is going to be somewhere else, and that pointer will point to essentially nowhere. That pointer won't be part of our program. So that's why we can never send raw pointers over the internet like this. Because pointers make no sense on different applications. So instead we're gonna have to refer them by their ID. I'm just gonna write the user ID here. And I'm also gonna specify that this is an unsigned shard. It could be an integer, it doesn't exactly matter. I mean, packing our messages is more efficient, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. And now we can only have 256 players, but let's say we will never have more than 256 players. We could make it integer. Fuck, let's just make it integer. I talked myself out of this. Yeah, I mean the only problem would be if we have more than 256 players. And of course, I mean, of course we have to decode this in the same way on the other side, but yeah. Anyways, so we're writing the user ID, so that's gonna be the player that we are spawning, and then we're gonna write where we spawned him or her or them. I'm just gonna say them. So we're gonna write an integer that's gonna be players. Actually, I'm just gonna fucking save the player as a pointer here. Actually, player. My God. Player is equal to the players. User ID. You don't have to do this. Just don't want to write this on the time. And then since we're making a variable, we have to wrap it in a brackets. Because you cannot declare variables, or you can, but we're gonna run into name conflicts unless we scope this. Like we're probably gonna make a player pointer here as well, and then it's gonna be cause a name conflict here in the switch. So we're just gonna scope that. So we're spawning it. Then we're gonna write. So here I'm gonna write the player's X position, X. I'm gonna write. Fuck. Ah, shit. There we go. So I'm writing the header, message header. Which type of message is this? I'm writing which ID of player we're currently spawning, and then I'm writing in where we're spawning them. And then I'm gonna server broadcast this. So all players, all users currently connected to the server will get this message. So all of them will spawn this player. And then I'm gonna free the message. It's important. Free it. Let it go. Let it go! Let it go! Someone hush me. Who hushed me? Oliver, fuck's sake. Oliver, you have a question?
No, I just finished.
Okay. Leon, did you have a question? Leon, you looked like you had a question. Why did you raise your hand if you didn't have a question, Leon? You're just gonna have to make up a question. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Don't bully. Sorry?
Why don't you free the message?
What?
Why don't you free the message?
What? Why don't you free the message?
Why do we have to free the message?
Good question, because that's just me being dumb. Because the message is implemented in a very it's all down to the net message implementation. It's allocating memory for the buffer when we're writing, so we have to free that buffer up. I could probably have written this in a better way, but it will make it more complicated, and I didn't want to make it complicated, so that's the reason. So it doesn't really have anything to do with networking or anything like that. It's just my implementation being what it is. So that's why we have to free it. It's not a big deal if you don't. You'll get a little memory leak. It's fine. So hell no. Message type.h, baby. Got the angry squigglies. Okay, so that's the server. So let's decode this then on the client. So when we're getting a message here on the client, we're gonna first of all read which type of message it is. So we're gonna read the message type. I keep switching. Can I customize this? Customize. Fuck.
You can turn it off, or you can also just remove all the other all the other keywords you don't want to use.
Chain key sequence not assigned. Okay. We're not gonna read an integer, we're gonna read a message type. I'm just gonna type, whatever. Message type is message read message type. So now we're gonna read one message type off of the message, and I'm gonna include this. And then we're gonna switch on the type. So if it's a player spawn, then we will players. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna read the index of the players. I'm just gonna wrap this again. It got not indented. I don't know. Did I write that? No, I do indent the cases. First of all, we're gonna read the integer for the ID. So we're gonna read an integer. Remember, same type. If we write a character, we have to read a character. If we write an integer, we have to read an integer. Otherwise, our data is gonna be mismatched. And then I'm just gonna spawn it with player, players, ID, spawn, and then spawn X and spawn Y. So here we're just gonna read two integers. Read int and message reads int. So we're just gonna read two integers from the screen for the X and Y. And then break. Break! Okay, so now when a user connects to the server, we're gonna send out a broadcast message telling all users to spawn a player with specified ID at specified location. So,
Wait a second.
okay,
What if people have already spawned?
okay, good question. Thank you. We're gonna wait with that. So, I'm gonna start up a server. Please don't connect. I want to, let's keep it a little bit clean, just so I can. Oh my god. Okay, I saw you. Can't hide from me. I don't want too many people, so we can actually kind of process what's going on here. Okay. So we connected here, but we're not seeing anything on the client. Can anyone explain to me why aren't we seeing anything?
You aren't drawing.
Yes,
players.
exactly. I'm not drawing the players. So let's draw the players. For auto player in players. If player alive, player draw. Go. Now let's try. So I start a server. Please don't connect. Please stop. I like your willingness to participate, but just hold on 1 second and you will participate soon. But I want to make a point here, and I want it to be clean so I can make the point clearly. Okay. So we get this happening. Here's the player. But on our client, we are seeing a player, but he's down here. That's
Get another client for funs and giggles.
we can get another. Yes, we can get another client for funs and giggles to bring up the point that was also brought up by Hugo. Okay, so what happens now? Here's our server. Here's our first client. We got a second player, so that's good. He's still offset, but he's at least there. However, on the second client that we connected, we only see one player. So we have two bugs here. First of all, the players aren't where they're supposed to be. Second of all, new players that connect aren't seeing the players that were already there. So we have already two problems with this that we need to work out. Let's begin with the offset thingy. Can anyone guess why we're getting offset here? It's okay if you don't know. But can I get a guess?
I'm reading the position is backwards.
That's what's happening, yes. It's mixing up the X and Y. So this is kind of a C++ thing. I don't even think it's kind of defined. I'm not quite sure. I don't think it's defined. Definitely not on release, I would say. But since we're calling functions for the inputs for this function, we have to suddenly take into account which order does it actually evaluate these arguments. Which argument is evaluated first? And in this case, what's happening is that it's actually going from back to front. So it's evaluating the last variables first before reading the next ones. Again, I don't think this is defined. I'm actually not sure. It might be defined. But what we've learned, since it matters, because read int does a bunch of shit, that we need to be really sure when it's happening. Which order is int being read? We need to make sure of that. That's why we have to be very careful when we're using message read in function calls directly. We have to be very careful, because stuff like this can happen very easily. So instead of plugging them into the function call directly, I'm just gonna make variables for them. So we're gonna do int x is message read int, and int y is message read int.
I'm assuming you have the free also in this function, right?
The free actually happens here.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so the free happens in the end of the event. It's ugly, but yeah, it is what it is. So now we have control over exactly when stuff is read and how. So now we can safely read our x and y values knowing what order they're gonna be read from. So now hopefully when we try again, whoops, oh, I didn't close our stuff. Hopefully now, start up a server, start up a client. Great, now they are aligned. Of course, I wasn't the first to arrive. Probably Oliver already connected. Yeah, okay. But as people are joining here, we can see that, okay, my players are aligning up with their players. So that's great. So now the position is at least drawn correctly. We can also see, since we use dead beef, we can kind of see that our players are slightly opaque. No, slightly transparent, I mean. Great. I'm gonna shut all your games down. Look at this. Whoa.
I was at least 14 people.
Yeah, so let's look at our second problem then, which is a client joining in late when there's already people on the server won't get all of the players. So you see here, I only get one of them. The second one didn't arrive. Oh yeah, first, oh yeah, never mind, let's finish what we were doing actually. No, let's not. Let's do this first. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So, first of all, we're gonna try to fix this problem. For new clients, we have to send all the other players that are alive. Whoops, I hit the microphone. So when a user connects, we don't only want to broadcast to all players that to spawn a new player, we also want to send to that user, hey, before you arrived, here's a bunch of players that already existed before you came. Okay? So let's do that. So I'm gonna go into server main. So I have user connected. Player spawn. So before I actually spawn the player, I'm gonna loop through all players. I'm gonna do it like this time. Player max. Whoops. God Damn it. And if they aren't alive, if they aren't alive, Q.
Just turn on server mode and it will fix for you.
Sorry?
Just turn on server mode and it will fix for you.
Internal server mode.
No. You know where it says client x64?
Yeah?
Change the server.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, so if they aren't alive, we don't care. But if they are alive, we're gonna send a spawn message. So we're just gonna send a message. And we're just gonna write this stuff, essentially. So we're gonna send player spawn. Instead of user ID, we're gonna send this player. So we're gonna send I. That's why I made a for loop like this. We're gonna send I. We're gonna send their X and Y location. So we're gonna do players I X and oops, players I Y. And instead of a broadcast, because all the other clients right now, they already know all the players. They already know what's there. We only want to send it to this one dude that just connected. So instead of server broadcast, we're going to do server send to. I'm going to send the message to this user that just connected. Okay. Hopefully this makes sense. We're kind of just doing the same thing, but for new users, we're also sending all other players that are already there. And say like, hey, you came in late, spawn these players. Okay. So let's run this. See what happens. Oh jävlar, okay, there's already a lot of people in here. Alright, so when I came in, there was already 3 people on the server. And I saw them being there. So hopefully all of your screens should be matching up with what you see on my server.
Yes.
Except when people leave. Then people might get a bit weird.
People are disappearing.
Yeah, so when people are disappearing, they're not disappearing on our screen, right? So if you look here, there's only 1 dude, but on my screen there's 2 dudes.
But they are disappearing sometimes.
Yes. So the thing is that since we're reusing players, what happens is that when the new user joins, they will sort of take over that player slot and respawn them. So that's why it moves to the new user login. Yes, question?
I don't know. I tried to build a client and it's giving me an error message.
It's giving you an error message. Okay, I'm just gonna check.
You just type followed by void. It's illegal. You forget a semicolon. And that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if this would suddenly work. I don't think I've been with this anymore. I don't think this bit has changed since last time.
Oh yeah, message type with H.
Yeah.
Go there.
How do I go there? Click like this?
Yeah. You can set it over the email.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Emil.
No problem. Alright. So let's real quickly, before we go to lunch, let's fix the disappearance issue. So when people leave, we want to disappear that player for every client. So we want to tell each client, hey, this player has left, destroy the player. So let's do that. So when I use disconnects like this, I'm gonna make another bracket. We are gonna send a similar message, but now we're gonna write the header to instead be message type player destroy. So now we know, okay, this message isn't a player spawn message, it's a player destroy message, and we'll run different code for this message. That's gonna be in our header, and then we're gonna write which player to destroy, like that. So we're gonna destroy the player of the user that just left. Yes, that's why you have to use the brackets, baby.
Oh fuck! Right.
You're acting so smug. It's like, oh no.
I'm sorry, guys.
That's okay, don't worry about it.
I know. I realized after failing.
We've all been there. We've all been there. Oh, be nice to Oliver. He's been through a lot. Okay, so now we're sending a message to destroy a player, and we're gonna similarly, or well, we're making it, we're not sending it, so I'm gonna server broadcast this. And then free it. There we go. So let's implement this on the client then. So here's the server sending the message, but now we're gonna interpret it. We're gonna interpret this on the client. So on the client, I'm gonna add another case here. So if the type of the message is player destroy, I'm gonna read the ID and then destroy that player. Okay. So let's try it. So I'll bring up the server. There it is. So people are joining in, so you can see that there's a bunch of players being spawned. Ah, user 0 disconnected, and you saw that his player went away. Of course, I'm on the server, so it's gonna look correct for me no matter what. So I'm just gonna start up a client to see if it looks similar there. So there's a bunch of people in here being all ruckus, doing ruckusy things. So I'm gonna ask you all to leave because you're making noise and the neighbors have filed a complaint. So please leave.
Kick us.
I should make a kick actually, so please kick all of you. Okay, whatever. You're being disobedient, but still, you can see that the players. Ah, there we go. Now it's almost left. Yeah, so you can see that these two are matching up. We've synced the players' existence on both sides. So even on the server, on the client, we're syncing the existence and destruction of players perfectly, without a problem. You have a problem?
What happens when two people connected to
Nothing.
It will still end like be one is before the other, so
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking over each other. Yes, sir.
Yes, Oliver is right though.
Okay.
Since the connections are placed in a queue, that means one of them is simply just going to be processed before the other. Since they're both happening on they will both happen on the same frame, but it won't actually be a problem. So it will work. I mean, I hope. I don't know. Maybe it won't.
So you have a sort of website.
But we can try it actually. If I do this, if I just hold it like this, so if a few people join in, so I'm like keeping the
Yeah, no. I joined, but nothing happened.
yeah. But if I let go now, there we go. So there we saw that a bunch of people joined in and the queue was sort of filling up, but I was keeping the program frozen. So then when I unfroze the program, all of those connections were handled like in one frame.
Boy, so all threads will be frozen then of the program.
No, just the game thread. But since we're doing everything important on the game thread,
Thanks.
those worker threads, the accept thread, will just sort of add it to the buffer that I talked about, but it will just stay there for a while until the game thread becomes alive again, and it will sort of start reading the buffer and say like, oh, I have a bunch of events here that I need to take care of. Well, it's actually, yeah, so there's a backlog. So there's two things, right? That's a different thing. Let me go to the server. So we have the backlog, right? Which I define here. When we mark the socket as a listen socket, we define a backlog. And that will kick people out unless we're accepting them fast enough. So unless we're accepting people as fast as they're coming in, this backlog won't be filled up. But if our accept thread was being locked, then yes, people will start getting kicked out because, you know, the accept thread wouldn't be accepting them fast enough. But since I'm buffering this, I believe I tested this, and I believe it's a connection refused. That's the error they get. So there is a connection there, but it was refused because it wasn't accepted by anything. But since the accept worker keeps trucking on, no matter if I'm freezing the game thread or not, it just keeps going. That means it's still accepting connections and it's pushing it through the event queue. Like here's like net push event. Okay. So here we'll be pushing it to an event queue here. So we won't have to worry about our socket buffer, our listen buffer getting filled up. The only thing that will happen is just the net event queue that we've written will start filling up with people. And that's an S3 vector, so I mean it can grow essentially as much as it wants. So yes, that is a good thing though to bring up, because that's the sort of edge cases that we have to think about when we're doing networking. What happens if this extraordinary thing occurs? Like what happens if 500 people connect on the same frame? What happens if on the same frame that we spawn a player, we also destroy a player? You know, all of these things we sort of have to take into account and make sure it works. So that is a very good question that you brought up. So thank you for that. But we're lucky now that it actually did work.
Quick question.
Yes?
Event mutex, that's a handle. Isn't that a thread handle?
Handle is just it can point to a bunch of different things.
Ah,
So you can point to a thread or an event or a mutex or a signal or anything.
why not define this as a mutex?
Sorry?
Why not just define it as a mutex?
It's just that I created as mutex here.
Oh,
Yeah, so handle is just a pointer to some kernel object, but it doesn't actually give any info about what kind of kernel object it is. So you just have to remember. When you're making a mutex, you have to make sure that you're treating it like the mutex and not like a thread. Okay. Any other questions before we take some lunch? Okay. Everything feeling tippy top. Okay, I will help you in a second. Alright, in any case, I'll see you guys back at 13 sharp. Have a good lunch, stretch your legs, hug a loved one, and hail Satan. So see you guys.